what I wanted to talk to you about today was the dangers of having 1099 contract employees.
Yes, that's always an interesting topic that comes up a lot. Typically, people think that if I hire 1099 contractors, I don't have to deal with the hassles of payroll, tax, employee taxes, HR, all that kind of stuff. But there's some serious things that people need to think about. First thing is misclassifying your contractors, because just because you claim they're a contractor doesn't make it so in the eyes of the state and the IRS agencies. There's some pretty strict guidelines around whether or not somebody can be a 1099 contractor. A lot of that is around the protections that the government puts in so that they can make sure they're getting their share of taxes and so forth, but it is pretty strict. So there is a lot of dangers in whether you're truly have 1099 contractors versus employees.
Well, what are some of the requirements of being a 1099 contract worker?
If you're a 1099, there are conditions, and there are several to meet, but there are some around controls, how much control over the way the work is done, the work tools that are provided in order to get the work done, and how much interaction they have over with your regular staff and your clients and so forth.
Okay, very good. What is another danger then?
Well, one thing people often don't think about until it happens is lawsuits. The dangers, usually they're related to workman's comp, so we see this a lot in some contractor areas, restaurant industry, those kinds of things where when people try to employ contractors, there tends to be a higher rate of accidents. So workman's comp, people then look for reimbursement when they get hurt and realize that as a contractor they're not entitled to certain claims, so they will complain about you to the other agencies. You can have those agencies, the Department of Economic Security, Department of Revenue, then come after you, either statewide or federal, because of the way you classified your employees if they contested at that point in time. So you have to be careful about what your contractor perceives as their role and what they understand as far as insurance and all those kinds of things are concerned.
Okay. And you mentioned something about unprotected business practices. So what is that?
Well, it's one thing people don't think about when they have contractors. You know, you get to know people, you like them, you work with them on a continuous basis, you keep things pretty loose, and you forget that they're running their own business. So with your practices, if you don't have good controls in place and your practices are unprotected, they can be easily adapted by somebody else, taken, stolen, call it what you will. But people don't often think about that again until something like that happens. So you have to be careful.
Okay, so what are some things that as a business owner I can do so that I make sure that, well, for one thing, I don't get in trouble with the IRS, or I don't have somebody coming back and filing a lawsuit against me?
Well, absolutely. I mean, one of the first things you do when you're thinking about having contract workers, or you're not sure whether you can classify contract workers, is work with your tax advisor and work with your accountant and make sure that if you're going to have contract workers, that you can pass and meet those requirements. So if it came back at you, that you were pretty clear that you've done the right things in order to have that. Another thing you can do is make sure you have contracts in place. If you're going to have a contract relationship with somebody, that should be in writing on paper, that everybody understands the way insurance is being handled, what their roles are going to be, what you're providing, what you're not providing, and again, what you're paying them and the frequency. When they accept that, they are accepting the responsibility that they know they are a contract employer, so that if there are ever any questions later, you kind of cover your butt. I mean, the last thing really is to put controls in place. If you're going to have contractors working with you in your business, with your clients, you have to have sets of controls to protect your business practices. I mean, whether it be ethics, how you choose to communicate with your clients, whether it's your confidential information, you have to have ways that that stuff is not as accessible to your contractors.
Very good.